Today I want to talk about a different kind of video. Most of my videos in the trucking industry are focusing on the daily business of truck driving, right? Tires and how to service the truck and some other things. And most of that stuff comes from experience that I've done. So when I talk about the business side of things, that also comes from things that I've done, because I've done the business side of things. I've made videos before and I kind of explained that the trucking business is not the only business that I'm in. And most of the time when you saw me doing driving in the early stages of my channel was because I was filling in gaps that the drivers weren't doing. Like if there was cars, and we only did cars. So if there was cars going here, cars going there, and I could assist in that, I would jump in my truck, which I have one of them dually for myself, with a 3-car hauler. And I would carry things here, I would carry things there. And that's where most of my experience comes from, is doing that. But the business end of things is a bit different. The business end of things of having a trucking company can be treacherous at best. I mean, it can be crazy, the things you have to keep up with, as you know. And you're in the cab of your truck in some truck stop trying to figure out, do I need to file my MS 190 or 150 or my MS 90 or whatever the heck it is you got to do. So rule number one in trucking is the first thing you want to do is hire one of these compliance companies to work for you. There's a bunch of them out there. Some are expensive, some are not so expensive. But you need to vet them and check them out and make references and stuff like that. But I can tell you, first thing you should do is get yourself a company like that, so that you don't have to, especially if you're driving the truck, you don't have to remember all these things, because somebody else is going to do that. And whatever you're paying them is going to be way better than you making a mistake. Because the first time you make a huge mistake and you get some giant fine from the Department of Transportation, you're going to say, man, I wish I would just give about 1/10 of that money or 1/4 of that money and got myself a compliance officer, right? And then the next thing, so that's rule number one. Rule number two is you want to keep extremely accurate records. I know guys right now, they get out there and they cowboy it, they run here, they run there, they buy their fuel, they don't even keep track of that. Extremely accurate records, because without that, you don't know whether you're making money or you're losing money. I asked somebody one time, they responded to my channel, they asked some questions below, and I called them and we got in this conversation. And I said, so what are your per mile marginalization factors? And do you figure your margins through pass-through cost, or do you go with ancillary cost and pass-through cost? In other words, set cost and then pass-through stuff. What do you do about fuel? What do you do about insurance? Have you broken it all down? And they're like befuddled. They didn't know what to say to that. And they were having problems because they didn't know whether they were making money or not. And they really needed to tighten their act up. So the second rule is accurate records. Know how much fuel you're using, how much your insurance it is, how many miles you drive, average that so you know how much you're making per mile, or how much it costs you to run per mile. Then you can figure out the per mile how much you're making, and all sorts of other things. So accurate record keeping is the number two thing you need to do. Number three is making sure you keep the company set up like it is. You need to make sure you separate you and your company, because if you're running an MC, you have a company set up, and separate the two. What I mean by that is, of course you got a debit card or a gas card or whatever, you're buying stuff, maintenance, repairs, and fuel for the truck. But don't buy McDonald's. Don't buy the shoes. Don't buy the hat that you saw that was at the truck stop said Ford on it like I did. Don't do that. You should buy those from your personal account and pay yourself from your business to your personal account. There's a corporate veil there that has to stay in place. So if something goes wrong and you get sued, they can only go after the company, can't come after you. But if you pierce that corporate veil enough by buying shoes and McDonald's and all these other things, then there's a lawyer somewhere that's going to prove that the money sitting in your company account and the money sitting in your personal account are one and the same, because there's no differentiation between that. And then that makes your personal money and house and everything else susceptible to be included in that lawsuit. LLC or no LLC, incorporated or S Corp, whatever you might be. So you want to make sure that you have maintained your business accounts and your personal accounts. Don't rob from yourself. Give yourself some, if you want to pay yourself per load or on salary, however you want to do it, you got to figure that out. And that goes back to the number two thing, which is keeping accurate records. You're not going to be able to pay yourself if you don't know if you don't know how much money you're making. And number 4, you have to check your ego at the door. Check your ego at the door. Don't do it. Don't let that ego get involved, because as soon as you let your ego get involved, guess what happens? You're going down in flames, because you make decisions based on ego and not based on the first 3 things I said, right? Not based on the facts that you have laid out in front of you. You let the ego. And the reason I say that is, and I've made videos, a couple of them I know I've referred to this, don't say, oh, I'm going to go get me some dualies. You know, if you're carrying cars, I'm going to get me some dualies. Oh, I want to carry those helicopter blades on my flatbed. Or you're carrying loads because you think they're cool or they look good. It's about the money. It doesn't matter if chitty chitty bang bang, you could get that car in a load, or you can go pick up 3 new Hyundais because you want to do it by the money. Does chitty chitty bang bang pay for money? No, the other ones do. Does Herbie the Love Bug pay more money? No, the other ones do. Always make the run based on how much you're going to make. The per mile don't care about what it is, whether it looks good or not, whether it makes you cool because you got 2 dualies on your 3 car, or you got 2 dualies in another car, or 2 cars more and only 5 car hauler. And don't worry about all that. Don't worry about any of that. Does it make money? That's all you should care about. Does the run make money? You know, so check the ego at the door. Don't worry about all that kind of stuff. And that also has to do with your truck. You're buying a hammer. Hammers get beat up. Why go out and buy a $150 hammer when a $60 hammer does the same thing but only costs $60? Don't go out there and get one of these dualies that are $80,000, $90,000. There's a guy running around. I know for a fact there's a Hotshot running around in a dually, in a GMC dually. That thing was like, I mean, just shy of $100,000. He bought a dually. Oh, it's Mac Daddy now. It is really something. How they put all that in a dually? It's got a sunroof. The whole roof of the truck is a sunroof, pretty much, right? It's crazy. It's crazy. What's that matter? So you can lay in the back seat of some truck stop and stare at the stars or something? Nah, give me a break. It's a hammer. Go buy the hammer that does the job. Don't go spend a bunch of money on the expensive gold-plated hammer. And all that falls under that ego, right? Because you've got to have this big, expensive thing. I'm going to live in it, so I want the most expensive thing. I see a lot of semi-trucks that way too. You see them all adorned with all this kind of stuff and huge sleepers. That comes at a cost of fuel miles. The heavier the truck is, the more fuel miles, the less you can put on the back of it. And that's the same thing as whether you're using a dually or you're using a semi. Here's the last thing. Get yourself an accountant. They're not expensive. They're not all that expensive. I know I'm driving up the cost, but if you're looking at how you make the money and not trying to have an ego in it, not trying to buy a really expensive truck, you can save some money and spend it on an accountant. An accountant, when he does your taxes, or he'll be able to give you, and he'll be able to tell you how to read them. He'll be able to give you spreadsheets that you can go on your phone sitting at a truck stop and know how much money your company's making per mile. You'll be able to have it like that because that guy's telling it to you. You don't have to be a math wizard. You hired a math wizard. So I would tell you, that's the last thing. Hire yourself an accountant. All these things will make your business more profitable and make it more stable. And then one day, you could hire another driver, get out of the truck, because that should be your goal anyway, is to get out of the truck. Hire a driver for the truck, right? And then you get out of that truck and you go and you take this business model and you rubber stamp this out, because once you have in place what I said, that's what I did, and I rubber stamped it out to multiple trucks, to multiple drivers, to multiple trailers. I lease trailers now. Right? I have trailer leasing that I do because of that. I was able to expand the business into these other areas now that contribute to the trucking areas. So that's the secret to it. You put those things in place that I mentioned before. You put all that in place, you're going to stand a lot better chance of being around for a while, rather than a lot of people that are just flash in the pan. A lot of people are 3 or 4 years in, maybe 5 years on the outside. The next thing you know, they're working as a truck mechanic somewhere, or selling cars somewhere, maintenance guy at an apartment complex after that. You don't want to wind up like that. Follow the prescription. And thank you for watching.